you here right now. We'll probably have some more people joining us shortly. If you could let me know down in the chat if is coming through okay, I'd certainly appreciate that. So I've got some delays on my end right now. So just let me know. Let me shut off the speakers here on my laptop. So just let me know if you guys can hear me okay in the chat. I would appreciate that. Also, all right. Thanks, Benji. I appreciate that. All right, so I'm just going to give you guys kind of a heads up of some of the things that I was going to talk about tonight, and I'll do the best I can to answer your guys' questions. I've mentioned this before in the videos I did today. I've got a head cold, so I'm pretty nasally. I apologize for that. There's a lot of things happening in the world. I want to talk about a number of different things. I don't want to go too long. I know some of the last time I did a live stream or was doing them was like in April. March and April, and some of those, man, they went for a couple of hours when we did like the fireside chats. Those are pretty nice. So it's not going to go that long this night. I can't do that just because my energy is kind of low with the cold. But there's a ton of stuff happening right now, and you guys are obviously aware of a lot of it. And I know we all, we're in different countries. We've got different backgrounds. We've got different political leanings, a lot of different beliefs. On the religious side of things, I'm going to talk about a whole bunch of things tonight. I'm going to talk about politics with Trump and Biden. I'm going to talk about some religious and spiritual viewpoints, because I think those things are really important. Probably going to say some things that irritate a lot of you guys, but just understand that I've got my viewpoint and I'm open to other people's viewpoints. Everybody has their different viewpoints on stuff. And when it comes to religion and spirituality, know that when I piss people off, I know where you're coming from. I am literally the son of a preacher man. My dad's a pastor, so I get it. But I've got some things to say about that. I've got some things I want to talk about in regards to the persecution. I'm going to say it that way, the persecution of what I see coming for conservative people. Anybody, you don't even have to be conservative as long as you have a contrarian viewpoint to what the mainstream media and the mainstream thinking is, whether it's in regards to politics or vaccinations or wearing a mask or the lockdowns or anything like that. The persecution that I see of individuals out there that you guys have no doubt seen as well. I want to talk about some things that I think it's important for you and your family to take some steps that you can take to protect yourself moving forward, because I think we're going through a really, honestly, it's like I never thought that I would live to see the day that America would kind of slide into where we're heading right now. I never thought we'd be here. It's entirely bizarre, and I certainly don't look forward to telling my son, who's currently 3 years old, what happened during this period of time. I don't think we're heading for good times, at least in the short term. I'll talk about that. First, I want to talk about just some general things. I mean, I've been absent from YouTube for a couple months now, and I was just doing my own thing, focusing a lot on my investments, changing some things up, and very involved in crypto. And honestly, it's like I took a step back from everything, because I just kind of got to the point where I was like, this world sucks. I mean, I got to the point, I think it was probably in October, where I was like, okay, this Rona shit is not going to go away. At least the political pressure and the mask mandates and the vaccine stuff, it's rolling out. It's going to happen. It's going to keep happening, not only through 2021, but beyond that. I believe it's going to change our society for the long run. Just like, after 9/11, the way we travel changed dramatically with TSA. That stuff has never gone away. I don't think the mask stuff is going to go away, even if it's ridiculous. And when people, it's really, a lot of these issues are highly charged, as you know. And I think it's difficult for a lot of people to stay objective and take a step back. I know a lot of my friends and family are caught up in, the Rona hysteria and wearing a mask and, staying away from people. And I look at things like, I look at the numbers for the normal flu and pneumonia, how they've dropped to 0 in the past year. And it's like, well, that, if that's the case, then we ought to be thanking Rona for, improving the health of a lot of people. And in the U.S., there's this big uproar that 400,000 people have died in the past year because of it. And, that's unfortunate, but people die all the time of stuff. And 400,000 deaths in the U.S. from any given cause is not a lot. And I don't want to seem callous, but, if we don't have people dying of pneumonia and flu like we used to, then they're probably going to be dying of something else. Because the last time I checked, we don't live forever. And as we get older, we get more susceptible to anything and we pass away. But whatever, common sense and logic don't seem to apply, at least in the mainstream, news and what's being, what's been out there and what's been pushed. If you've been paying attention, some of the stuff that, if you've seen some of the stuff like in Australia, in the UK and in Europe with regards to how the authorities, how the police, how they go after people, shut people down, arrest them, it's really disconcerting. It's really disconcerting. And also just as concerning is the fact that people are willing to rat on their neighbors. And I look at that and I go, this is a really dystopian future. That's actually happening right now. And how did we get here? And, I think when people live in fear of anything, it's like, you mess with your own immune system. And if you're living in fear of anything, getting yellow fever, then you're going to be more susceptible to getting it. And so that's not good. Or when you get anything, you're going to, be in fear, panic. You don't want that. But whatever, it's like this, everybody basically has picked their side in terms of the Rona stuff that's out there, and there's nothing we can really do about it. As far as I can tell, because people's minds have already been made up. And it's unfortunate. I don't know how we're going to solve a lot of these things, actually, that I'm going to talk about tonight. These things are really frustrating for me. But a month or so ago, I talked to my doctor, and I'm like, dude, I get me on an antidepressant. Like, I've never been on one in my life, but I need one because, I'm not very happy these days. And I need something. Like, I told him, I was joking with him. Honestly, it's like, I'm like, maybe what I need is to start taking ecstasy so I can at least have a smile on my face when, the world is like careening off a cliff. Because that's certainly what I feel like is happening. And I question basic things like, why the hell did I get picked in the lottery to be born during this time where I get to see this stuff unfold? And have to raise a son who's going to be growing up in the midst of this. And I'm sure a lot of people are, many of you are probably thinking the same thing. People I know have just been hit big time emotionally with just, not just political stuff. Most of the people I know are actually are liberals and voted for Biden, I think. But the lockdowns, the mask mandates, social distancing has done just a number on people. And I don't think it's going to get better anytime soon. I think there's a much bigger agendas. A lot of you are probably aware of that stuff, where it's clear that there's a lot of things happening at a higher level, and not just some kind of health scare. It's there's a transfer of power. There's a transfer of wealth that's happening. Small businesses are losing out, and businesses is kind of flowing towards the big box stores like Costco, Walmart, and online places like Amazon. And it's just crushing small entrepreneurs, small business owners that are having to shut down and that might never come back. And that's pretty disconcerting. So, there are a lot of things going on. And I want to talk about Trump and Biden. For me, and I think for a lot of people, today especially is a pretty sad day. It's the last day of Trump's term, and with Biden moving into office, and, even before he's moving into office, we see a lot of alarming things that are only going to get worse as he moves in. I think what's going to happen when Biden moves in is that he's going to kind of clean house. They've already done this we have something like 30,000 or more National Guard in D.C., which looks like, it's like downtown Baghdad or something. Totally dystopian. And why we need that is beyond me. Especially, I'm surprised why didn't why weren't the National Guard called in this past summer when there were riots and they're looting and places were being burned? They didn't seem to care at that point. But we've got them now. And from the sound of it, it sounds like even after the inauguration, at least 6,000 National Guard are going to stay in D.C. And so I look at that and I go, man, this looks like North Korea or communist China. Very dystopic, something I never thought I would see in this country. And I'm concerned not only for America, but I am concerned for the rest of the world, because what happens to the U.S., for better or worse, will affect the rest of the world. And I think it's we haven't always done the best things for other countries, but if we're not around, we're not in good shape. The world could be in a much worse position. So we got some issues there. There's talk, there's conjecture of people, and I hope to God it's true. I don't think it is. I think it's a long shot, but I would like it to be true that, there's this talk that, Trump or the military will step in at the last moment and, that Biden actually won't take office, that Trump is going to be in there. And I would certainly like for that to happen. I don't think it's going to happen. I think it's a real long shot. And it's unfortunate, and a lot of people had a lot of faith in Trump. The Q movement, the QAnon movement. A lot of people, and me too, I kind of put my hat in that ring. And I have no apologies for doing that and believing in Trump and believing that there could be a plan for something better. Because the way I see it, Trump is the only guy that we have had in any of our recent history in the last 100 years or a long time that could actually have a chance at changing things at a massive scale. Because you can't change things at a massive scale unless you are in a position of power in politics and you have access to intelligence services and the military and the full weight of a presidency. And nobody else that we have stands a chance. Everybody else is basically they're part of the system, and so we don't have that opportunity with anybody else. And I don't know honestly that we ever will, because with what happened with the election and voting and the machines and the discrepancy and all that stuff, I have no faith that in the United States we will ever have a legitimate election again. And that puts us in the same boat as the banana republics throughout the world, where there are just totalitarian regimes that take over, and they always win an election because the election isn't fair. And that to me is extremely scary, to even think about that. So I would like that to be true, if something were to happen tomorrow, but I really don't think it's going to. I'm really disappointed in a lot of things. I can't imagine being Trump and trying to get anything done as kind of an outsider, outside of the mainstream political system, trying to get anything done in the past 4 years while you are constantly being attacked by the media. You are constantly under investigation for a BS impeachment or Russian collusion, when you're surrounded by people that have deep ties to the system and the deep state. I cannot imagine him. I'm surprised something bad didn't happen to him, and I'm thankful it didn't. And but he's the one guy that I see that's out there that could have made a change. And honestly, 95% of people in politics, whether they're on the right or left, I don't trust them. I think they're bad people. I don't think they have our best intentions, in their hearts. And so I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen. All I know is I don't like the incoming administration and a lot of the things I'm seeing from the liberals and the very vocal ones. I know I don't want to paint liberals with a broad brushstroke. I know that most of them, the overwhelming majority of them, are very good people. But the ones that have big voices and the ones that are very outspoken are saying some very dangerous things for society that will put anybody who is a conservative or anybody who thinks differently than their point of view in danger. We've seen, and you guys, this has been happening ever since the Rona stuff started. deplatforming and censoring of people on social media. But things really got amped up when they went after Parler, and Amazon got in the fray and basically took away their web hosting, where you have more commercial companies that are really monopolies. They're huge companies that if Google and Amazon don't like you, you're kind of screwed. And I've seen people just individuals, because of their viewpoints online and social media, their businesses have been ruined. They're small businesses because they've lost their ability to use email lists or Shopify to do basic e-commerce stuff, and that's super discouraging to see. And I don't know. It's a really interesting time we're in, and I'll say interesting. It's really kind of a sucky time to be around. And I'm going to talk about religious viewpoints and spirituality, because I think right now, and I'm going to come back to this, I think, before the end as well, because I think, whatever your religious or spiritual viewpoints are, it's important in times like this. And honestly, it's really the only thing that you can lean on in times like this sometimes. What I think is funny is that a lot of people criticize the QAnon movement and people's, the trust the plan mantra that, was thrown around and is still used by people who follow that. And they were heavily criticized. But I look at that and I go, that's no different than saying that God is going to save us, or that Jesus is going to return and save us, or that we are, collectively, our consciousness is rising. Some great awakening is happening. It's the same thing. It's just, it's a hope and a prayer that either, some entity or some person in the flesh is going to come to our aid. And honestly, it's like I have a Christian, upbringing. I have a belief in a higher power, but I got to tell you, I am pissed at God, or collective consciousness, or universal consciousness, or whatever you think is out there. And I think it's a mix of everything. I'm pissed because people always say, well, God's going to return, Jesus is going to return, and it's like, that should happen millennia ago. What's the reason to wait? That's no different than saying next week is going to be boom week. Trust the plan. Next month, things are going to happen. If God was going to return, if Jesus was going to come back, why didn't he already? If collectively the Great Awakening was going to happen, and our consciousness was going to, we were going to awaken, and our consciousness was going to elevate, what the hell went wrong? Because the last time I checked, we're still here. And I look at it and I go, people want to believe in something. We all need to, but honestly, it's all hope. And that's what faith is. It's hope in something that we don't see. And so that's what I kind of look at. That's what we're left with. And I look at that and I go, that's kind of shitty. That's pretty shitty. To just have to hope and have faith in someone or something to come to our aid. I hope that God sends his angels, or aliens come and help us, or something, or some military coup happens that restores peace to the U.S. and makes things right and outs the cabal or whatever. But I don't think it's going to happen. I sort of view us as we are the space family Robinson on the last spaceship in the universe, and we're going to have to solve this stuff on our own. And where we are right now is not one that is very good. But nonetheless, I know some of the things I said are probably going to rub people the wrong way, and that's okay. I'm going to piss a lot of people off. And 500 years ago, I would have been burned at the stake. But we're not 500 years ago. I don't know what the answer is. I know for me, I've just gotten sick of the whole, it's going to happen, things are going to get better, whether it's something in politics or something in religion or something in spirituality. When in reality, the reality on the ground is that things aren't getting better, that things are getting worse, and that even when things were better and times were quote unquote normal, there are horrible things happening all around the world. A lot of people tell me, well, Ethan, you just got to focus on the good things in the world. And I tell them, I'm not somebody that can just stick my head in the sand and ignore the fact that people are dying of diseases that we don't need to have. in this world, or people are going hungry, and we have bad things happening that could be fixed easily, from my perspective. And there's a lot of really bad things in this world, and so that's why I'm irritated. I'm irritated at people, and I'm irritated at God. I'm irritated at spirit. And so I don't exactly know what to tell you. I think ultimately the only thing that you can really trust is yourself. That's what it comes down to for me. Ultimately, that's all we have to do. You know, ultimately all we have to work with. All right, so I'm gonna talk about a couple other things, and then I'll open up for questions. And I'll check the questions in the live chat when I'm done here, so you guys, you guys can chat while this is going on. I see a lot of good conversations that are going on right now in the live chat. But when it gets time, I'll ask for questions. Just paste your questions in. I'll answer as many as I can. Give you my opinion on stuff. Lori, before this started, had asked me to talk about just kind of the immigration crisis and what's happening at the border. Excuse me, if you haven't been paying attention, there are a bunch of people, I think, from Guatemala, from Central America, that are approaching the U.S. border. They're apparently excited about the incoming Biden administration because Biden wants to basically legalize all the illegal immigrants that are here in the U.S. and is probably going to open the door and welcome everyone with open arms who wants to cross the border. To me, this is, I don't have any good things to say about that. I'm not anti-immigration at all. I think immigration is good as long as it's done legally and you go through the proper channels. But what's happening right now is, and I think one of the reasons why the Democrats and the Biden administration want this to happen, is it will increase their voter base. Not that I think they need it, because I think the voting is never going to be legit from here on out. I just don't think it is, which is really disconcerting. But not to mention the fact that, the politicians are, spreading all this fear and alarm about Rona, and I'm sure they're going to open up the borders to thousands of people that aren't social distancing, that aren't wearing masks, and they're just going to welcome them with open arms. And it's just, I look at everything that's happening and I go, why can't people wake up and see that the people in power don't give a shit about us? And they think that they can make rules for us that don't apply to them. That's just the way it is. You see that all the time. And it's super disappointing. And I don't know, honestly, how we get past that, because the right way to do that is through the election process. But if elections are not legitimate, how can you do that? You can't do that. And if you don't allow civil discourse of dissenting viewpoints, it doesn't matter what your viewpoint is or what somebody else's is, I should give you the ability to speak freely your mind and give your opinion on something, even if it's something I don't agree with. As soon as I try to silence you, that's a problem. I'm the problem. And the fact that that's happening right now is extremely alarming. So I don't know. I mean, a lot of people I watch on YouTube, they have to be really careful about what they say, because they're going to get their channels deleted. They're going to get, the videos taken down, and possibly bigger implications. So the one thing I saw the other day, like, people are just piling on Trump, like corporations, businesses. I saw that, I don't remember the exact details, but some of the banks were going to stop working with Trump and his companies because they didn't like him. And I think they did this to a sitting president. He's not even out of office yet. Do you think they're going to give a shit about you or I? If they're willing and able to do that to a sitting president, they don't give a shit about you or I. And so for me, I look at that and I go, fuck, I've got to do some things for myself and my family to try to hedge my bets and protect myself. And I want to talk about some of those things with you guys to give you guys some ideas. So there are a number of things that are happening, and they've already started happening in the past year. We've always had this deal where The governments of the world, and the U.S. is one of the biggest offenders. We print money. We increase the national debt. We spend more than what we can afford, and that devalues the dollar and decreases the purchasing power of it. And it's been that way for over 100 years. So one of the things that is good and that has historically helped preserve wealth for people in times of devaluation of their fiat currency, whether it's the euro or the US dollar or anything, is gold and silver. And so I've liked that for many years. I've invested in gold and silver as a hedge to protect myself and my family. I don't know if that's a good idea anymore. I don't know how practical that is, because ultimately they could just come out and say that it's illegal to have it. You can't transact in it, and then you become a felon even if you have it and you have to make that decision. It's also a pain in the ass. Like physical gold and silver, I was talking to one of my buddies recently, and I'm like, he's like, if something happens, you could just go and like, use your silver and gold. And I'm like, dude, there's no way I'd want to go to the grocery store and pay for groceries with a handful of silver coins, because that paints a target on my back. There's no way I'd want to do that. So there's also the issue that we've had. If anybody's been in precious metals for any amount of time, you realize that that the price of gold and silver have been manipulated. And this is pretty widely understood in the industry. Brent Johnson of Santiago Capital had a video probably a year or two ago, and he said, look, we know that the price of gold specifically is manipulated. And he said, what's to make anybody think that that's ever going to change? And that's actually one of the reasons why I got rid of some of my gold and actually moved some of my gold into crypto, because crypto is less manipulated than precious metals. Crypto is something I want to talk about. Crypto has, a lot of people don't like crypto. People who like gold and silver sometimes don't like crypto because they feel like it's not something physical they can't hold. If the electricity goes out, you can't use it. My argument is if the electricity goes out, we're fucked. Modern society cannot run without electricity. We'd be dropped back into 1900. We're screwed. We can't. Society is not going to function very well if that happens. So you can't really assume for that, because that's like Mad Max type stuff. And honestly, I don't want to make it through a Mad Max situation. I don't even want to prep for that. That's not worth my time. So the one thing I like about crypto, here's what I like. Right now, like if I'm in the US and you're in Europe, and I want to send you some money because I want to help you out, like you need some money, you're in a tight spot. Without cryptocurrency, I'd have to go to the bank and do like a wire transfer. It's a pain in the ass. And the bank or the government might block that. They might say, well, that's a suspicious transaction. Anybody who's tried to send money via PayPal or wire transfer knows that kind of stuff can happen. Especially PayPal, it's like, well, why can't I send money to this person? Why do you, with crypto, nobody can stop you. The governments can't stop you. The banks can't stop you. As long as I know your address, I can send you cryptocurrency. And then you on your end can convert that crypto to fiat, like US dollars or euros, assuming they don't make it illegal, which they might. There's that possibility, because they don't like it, they're not in control of it. And when you are power hungry, like the governments of the world are, they do not have our best interests in mind. And if you are under that impression, you should get over that really quickly. When they are not in control of something, they don't like it. When they can't manipulate it, when they can't print more of it, they don't like it, because they don't like to let somebody else be in control of something. I like things that I'm in control of. I like things that the government doesn't have control over, because I don't trust governments, because I've seen what governments have done historically. And so there's a good reason to always be doubtful about the intentions of your government and what they're doing, no matter where you live. Whether you're in Europe, Australia, UK, US, Canada, it doesn't matter. Always be wary of the government. Anybody in politics that says they're doing something to help you, really, they're looking to help themselves get reelected. They don't really give a shit about you. Very few people in politics give a crap about you or I. It's just the way it is, unfortunately. I wish we could have a better world and everything could be. We could have an amazing world if we could just like wipe the existing governments and political structures away and redo them and put good people in, good people with good hearts and good intentions. This world could be transformed very quickly. That's the kind of stuff that needs to happen. That's my world. But that kind of world isn't going to happen unless we have somebody like Trump, who has the inside, political leverage and access to the military, access to intelligence services, access to powerful people and connections to make that happen. Like the UK isn't going to be the leader for that, right? Ukraine isn't. Zimbabwe isn't. It's got to be the US. And if we don't do it, well then God or the angels or somebody, the aliens better come down and do it, because if they don't, we're never going to have that world. We're never going to have it. The only way we'd have that world is if calamity hit. We had some flood or asteroid hit us, and 90% of the population was wiped out, and we had a small percentage of people left that we could start over with and do it right, because I don't see us being able to fix things where we are. And I know a lot of this is negative talk. This is like reality on the ground. Like, I'm not going to bullshit you. I'm not a bullshit person. I'm not going to say believe in Jesus, trust God. I think it's good to have your faith. I have my faith. I believe. I'm pissed off at myself. I'm pissed off at God, collective consciousness, the universe, whatever you want to think, that we haven't fixed this shit already. Right? We are at the 11th hour of the Trump administration ending. And we are in the midst of a shitstorm around the world. And things are only going to get worse. Anybody who thinks that things are going to get better is delusional. I don't know. All right, so asset allocation, I'm going to talk about this. I'm going to move over to finance stuff. Somebody had asked at the beginning, if you had, let's say $10,000 or $50,000 or whatever, let's say $10,000 sitting on the sidelines, and you were wondering what to do with it. They had asked, like, what are your recommendations? And I'm not going to make financial advice for any of you guys specifically to do. So anything that I say that I would do, it's just like for me or advice to my younger self. I would split what I had up between cash at home, because cash is really important to have at home. Some in the bank, as a reserve in your bank account, and don't spend that on stupid shit. Leave it in the bank. I would probably put 25% in gold and silver, and I'd put at least 25% into cryptocurrency, probably more. Personally, I have a much higher risk. I'm okay with the risk a lot more than most people. I historically had a significantly high percentage of my net worth in precious metals, and I've reduced that now. But now I have a very high percentage of my assets in cryptocurrency, way more than what most people would be comfortable with. Just because I see that as it's the future, in my opinion. Anybody who's been in crypto knows that it's like a roller coaster ride that makes you want to throw up, because your investment value can go up or down by 30% or more on any given day. So that's something I like, and I've actually had pretty good returns, phenomenal returns just in the past 3 months with my assets in cryptocurrency. Not that this is going to not drop to zero. I understand that anything I invest in could drop to zero. I understand that dollars that I keep in my bank account could be worthless. Stocks could be worthless. Land could be worthless because they could say you can't own it. So the government, we are all like the bitches, the slaves, the serfs of the government. And I know people don't like to hear that, but we are all slaves. We are all enslaved at multiple levels. We never truly own anything, because all it takes is the government to say you can't own anything. You can't have a bank account. They can increase your property taxes. Even if you paid off your mortgage, you don't really own your house. Just don't pay your property taxes for a couple of years, see what happens. The government's going to take it. So none of us are truly free. And, finances, money is like one of the great controlling mechanisms that governments of the world have over us. Like we don't run our own banks, corporations do. and they answer to the governments. This is why I like cryptocurrency, because it keeps them out. Now, there are problems with crypto that, it could be a disaster in the future. I don't know. I don't know the answer to anything. But I think it's good to consider diversification into multiple assets. Keep some cash at home for emergencies, some in the bank for an opportunity fund if you need it or an emergency. Some in, you might like stocks. Prior to the election, I had a lot of my assets in dividend stocks, solid companies like Coca-Cola or 3M or Procter & Gamble or Johnson & Johnson that I know are going to be around for, the rest of my life. So, some of that stuff is good. Land, farmland, real estate. In some cases, real estate, like if you own, like residential real estate, you're kind of getting screwed because the government has told people, like, hey, you don't need to pay your rent. Well, that sounds great if you're a renter, but if you're, the owner and you've got a mortgage to pay, you're screwed. There's no relief from you, from the government. So it puts people in a bad spot. I always think that when you are dependent on somebody else for money, whether that's rent payments or a job, that you're always at a disadvantage, and it's so tough to free, yourself. And it pisses me off that we aren't taught about financial literacy in school, and I think it's intentional. It's intentional so that people can't get ahead and can't get freedom from financial slavery, really. But that's a whole different talk. But that's one of the reasons I like crypto, is that it gives the power back to people and takes it away from governments and the banking institutions. All right, I'm gonna go to questions now. I'll take a look at some of that stuff. Darla says, what are your thoughts on XRP? I kept a little bit of my XRP, Darla, but I converted most of it. I think I switched it to Litecoin. For those of you that aren't familiar with crypto, XRP is one of the cryptos that's out there. It was, the SEC is basically kind of going after the company behind it. So the question of the price, the value of XRP in the future is, in question. But I did hang on to some of it, not all of it. I don't know. I mean, anything you hold in crypto could go to zero. XRP has a solid background. I don't think it will. But the question is, like, whatever country you're in, whether the US or someplace else, will you ever be able to cash out of it or sell it? I mean, you can convert it from XRP to something else like Litecoin or Bitcoin if you want, using some online services. But the Ministry of Truth said, why would you want to bring children into this world? You know what, man, I totally agree. I mean, my son is 3 now, but if we were going through this stuff, 4 years ago, I would have said, no, I want to wait until this stuff blows over, because I look at this and I go, my son, if things don't change, is going to grow up with a new normal that is really fucked up. Like, kids right now, from a very young age, are seeing people en masse and are having to put masks on when they go to school. That is their normal. We're dehumanizing society. When you can't see somebody's face, you can't see their facial expressions. That's what's happening. And the whole idea of being fearful of something and having to take a vaccination that's forced, they're probably not going to force vaccinations, but they will make them compulsory. And what that means is they'll say, well, you can't travel to a foreign country unless you have a vaccination passport. Or maybe even you can't travel to a different state, or you can't have your kids in school unless they're vaccinated every 2 or 3 months or whatever it is. They'll basically force everybody to do it. It's going to be very difficult. And honestly, I'm very much against the vaccine because I've seen what people have said about it. I don't want it. But I tell you something, like, I don't want to stay where I am forever, and I want to be able to travel the world, to a lot of countries before I die. So if this bullshit doesn't stop and vaccinations are required for travel, eventually I will get it, knowing the risks of the vaccine, because I want to go see the world. And you just have to weigh things, your decisions in life. And I don't know, I mean, I'll get to that point. I think a lot of people will. So I'm realistic about it. I think it's fucked up. I think it's messed up when, people like Bill Gates, they fund a lot of the vaccine stuff. And if you know, like the Bill Gates stuff, I mean, Bill Gates is like, just came out recently, like he's the biggest owner of farmland now in the U.S. Like, awesome. Like, what can we expect from that? We're gonna have like more GMO stuff. Is he gonna say we're not gonna grow crops on that land? Are there gonna be food shortages, increased food prices? I don't know. I don't trust the guy. I don't like the guy. I have issues with billionaires like him that seem to like power over other people, and they want to change the world. And the way they want to change the world is not the way I want to see it changed. Which is one of my goals, is someday be a billionaire and do some good in this world and to counter all the bullshit that's going on out there. But yeah, Darla says, yeah, I'm in healthcare and I wouldn't have this vaccine even though I enjoy traveling as well. Yeah, I mean, it's true, Darla. Like, it's like, man, it's a tough one. It's a tough one. It's just a really tough one. It's so messed up that we're here. And I don't understand why people, like, they don't see basic logic. I mean, even what's coming out in the mainstream media, they say if you're vaccinated, that's not going to stop you from having to wear a mask. And you're going to have to get revaccinated every, I don't know, couple months. So it's like, well, what is the point of the vaccine? That seems to have some fairly serious side effects for some of the people that are getting it. So common sense would say that the vaccine is absolutely useless if you still have to wear a mask, which is, the virus slips on through the fibers in a mask anyway, but that kind of stuff just doesn't get through to the brainwashed people, and it's super disappointing. And the brainwashed people are going to be the ones that silence anybody who is a dissenting voice. We saw that, last spring when some of the doctors started coming out and they started saying, look, hydrochloroquine or these other things are good solutions. These will help people, or they were saying masks are not effective, and they were deplatformed. They were criticized. Anybody who sided with them or said, hey, these guys have a valid opinion, we should listen to them, they were ostracized. And it's so messed up. It's like, there are a lot of the issues like the vaccination stuff, whether you're pro-vaccine or anti, that kind of stuff crosses over political boundaries. So it's not always like a, left versus right type thing in the stuff that we're facing. It's just, whenever we have a society, when people who have a different opinion, dissenting voices are shut down, it's a really bad thing, and it's not going to be a good future. What am I supposed to tell my son, like, when he grows up? I mean, I was talking to, my fiance today, and I said, look, all this stuff, what it's taught me, the political stuff, what it has taught me, honestly, is that one of the lies that we tell ourselves is that if you're a good person and you do good things, that you'll get ahead. That's true. But what's been shown at the high levels is if you are a bad person and you do evil shit, you really get ahead. That's honestly how the world works at the high level. Like, that's fucking awesome. Like, I'm supposed to tell my son, like, I'm not going to bullshit my son about the world. And that's what I get to tell him? That's amazing. I get to tell him that, the brainwashed people out there, that he can't have a dissenting voice, that there is not really freedom of speech, or bad things could happen to him. I saw, like 2 weeks ago, it was really fucked up. Maybe you saw this, I think I saw it on Twitter. It came out of China. China is really totalitarian, and this kind of stuff could spread to other places like Australia, like the UK, Europe, US, eventually slowly, but it could come. And this guy was being interrogated by police, and he was in some contraption that looked like it was a medieval torture thing. His hands were all pinned down. He was there and being questioned by the police because this is his crime. that he had been critical of the police. So he was hauled away and put in this constraint device, which looked medieval. And I'm like, this stuff is happening in China. This stuff could happen elsewhere. And yeah, so I don't know. It's just really, yeah. So, yeah, Missy says, do not put your trust in man. Agreed. But Missy, it's like I said before, and maybe you weren't on, but who do I put my trust in? Like, if I'm going to trust in God, I have a greater belief that I will go to the grave without seeing something magical happen. And that is super sad. So who do you trust? You trust yourself and your family and the people close to you. That's really all you have. Girly Girl says, do you think China is here right now? In many ways, yes. I mean, it's like we're, and the Biden administration is just going to open them or welcome them with open arms. Like China obviously is on they are going to become the next United States. They are going to become the next major superpower. I have no doubt about that. In the U.S., just like the incoming administration and seems to want that. And it's so messed up to me when I look at the politicians who want open borders and who have no problem selling secrets to China and, Iran or giving money to the Iranians. And I go, what are they trying to do? And don't for 1 second think they give a shit about you or I. And it's really interesting. I don't know. It's on the spiritual side of things, people always in the spiritual community, they're like, well, we were incarnated or born into this time to be part of this great awakening. Like I look at this and I go, this is fucked up. Like you could have left me off the list of like who was coming on board on Earth at this point. Like I could do without this. Thank you. But nonetheless, I'm here, so I have to deal with it and watch what's happening. And it's really tough. Like for you guys too, this. Like it's tough when you know what you had and then you lose it, right? If you're 5 years old, you never know that you've lost something because you never knew what society was like. But for all of us, we saw what it was like. We saw what it was like to do stupid, simple shit, like be able to go to a theater and sit next to somebody else, or go to a park, go to a bar, go to a concert, go to whatever, hug somebody, shake their hands. And it's messed up to see what's happened. And I don't think it's going to change anytime. Biden said that, and this is just recently, that once he got into office, he was going to most likely implement a mandatory face mask mandate for the U.S. So we'll see if that happens. So, Sunkiss says, are we in 2021 or 1984? Yeah, right? 1984, definitely, it definitely feels like that. Yeah. Yeah, Girly Girl says, prepare for the dark winter. Yeah. I think it's going to last longer than the winter. All right, so what would you guys like to talk about? Esperanza says, hey, Ethan, I bought my 4-year-old clothes and shoes for the next 2 years after hearing that you bought your son stuff. Yeah, so that's one thing that I did, like, right at the beginning of, almost a year ago now, at the beginning of the Corona stuff, I was like, oh, shit. We're going to have stuff that hits the fan in terms of the supply chains. And, it was like, okay, well, I've done things like, put away food, for my family in case there's an emergency. But like I didn't have like clothes for my son. And I'm like, when you have like a 2-year-old and they're growing, I mean, you got to have new clothes like every 6 months. And so I went out and I bought clothes, just like one pair of, pants and stuff like that for basically what I think he would have, worn all the way up to the age of 18. And I was like, I don't give a shit if people think I'm fucking nuts, because like I don't want my son to not have something, and I have no idea what's coming our way. So I think it's a good idea to have some extra stuff. You don't need to be as crazy as I am, but so Dad's Vintage Garage says, Ethan, if you had or made time for a hobby, what would you do? What's a distraction? So that's a good question, actually, and it's like that's the situation I'm in right now. I'm fortunate. I'm retired, right? I started my own company. It was successful, and I hired a CEO last year, so I'm kind of retired. And so part of my issue is, and I'm guessing everybody who enters retirement has this issue, is like, you're like, what the hell is my purpose? Like, what should I be doing to further my life and other people's lives? And also, like, what the hell do you do? I've like, ever since, basically I hired the CEO like a month before the Rona came out. So I didn't, all I've been doing is basically focusing on that and trying to figure out like, what the hell do I do? I've spent the past couple months, every day I do research, I learn about new stuff, like on YouTube or just reading articles. I like that kind of stuff. Just learned about investing, things like that. Yeah, Love and Light said, do a research about World Economic Forum. Man, Klaus Schwab, you guys need to watch that video. That guy is straight out of some like Hunger Games movie. Their whole push for 2030 is, and this is no joke, their videos are out there. They're promoting this idea that in 2030, you won't own anything and you'll be happy. And you look at something like that and it's like, are they going to outlaw private property or make it so expensive, whether the land or the house price or the property taxes, to make it, unviable for people to actually own property, and only the super wealthy will have it? Very dystopic stuff. And this stuff isn't just like made up. This is like the guy in charge, of the World Economic Forum. It's really, I don't even know what to say about this world. Like, I feel like I woke up in like some kind of fucking nightmare where you have to try to figure out like how to make it through for the rest of your life. Like, how are you gonna make it through? Yeah, 11 Lights said, no, even billionaires aren't safe against the system. Think of Jack Ma from Alibaba. Yeah, it doesn't matter. I think like the people that at a high level that kind of, run things, as it were, super powerful. They don't, when you get up into the billionaire class, a lot of the billionaires of the world and the multimillionaires, they've got connections with people, whether it's through Hollywood or politics or whatever. And they kind of become part of the system. But even if you're part of the system, I think the system will throw you under the bus if it doesn't want you or doesn't like you anymore, or you get out of line. So there's no safety. If you're friends with the mafia is only going to be good to you as long as you toe the line. Yeah, Rebecca says, my husband and I work so hard for our current home. That's, yeah, I don't know, like, I think a lot of things are going to happen that we view as being unfair. So there's been a lot of push for in previous years, and then it will happen again, like student loan forgiveness. And I don't like the fact that people have debt, like student loan debt or mortgage debt that's kind of hung around their neck and can last their entire life. But I am also like somebody that says, like, don't take out a fucking loan for $100,000 to study women's studies or anything if you can't get a job to support that. And if we forgive student loans for people who have them, what are we going to do for future students? Do we make it free? Because when we make things free and the government pays for them, The university is going to, skyrocket the tuition prices because they know the government's picking up the tab. What do we do for responsible people who have worked their butt off to pay off their student loans? What do we do for the people that decided not to go to college because they couldn't afford it or they thought it was financially unwise? It's not an easy solution, and just it gets you elected when you say, yeah, we're going to forgive student loan debt, but it's highly unfair to do it unless you take everybody into consideration. So, Idalia says, any advice on what to do with the 529 plan? God, what's a 529 plan? Let me Google that really quick. I've heard. All right, so it's a tax advantage savings plan to help pay for education. So I haven't used that college savings plan. I opened, I don't know how that works in the specifics of it, but I opened that for my son. It's called a UTMA account. It's like a uniform transfer to minors account or some weird name that allows you to put money into like the stock market for your kids' like future education. I don't know what the 529 plan, like how that works, if you're in control of it or somebody else is. What I did with, my son's UTMA account as well as my personal investment accounts when it comes to stocks, I actually, about a week before the election, I sold off like 99% of my stocks, and I moved them into cryptocurrency in the stock market through the Grayscale trust funds, and like they did phenomenal. They've done phenomenal since. I don't know that it's going to work out, in the future like that. I think it will, but I never know. So you might want to look at that. If you can adjust some things, you might want to add a little bit of crypto in there. Grayscale has, you can buy a slice of crypto, kind of, through almost like a stock or an ETF. It's actually a slice of a trust. But look up the Grayscale trust. They're like GBTC for Bitcoin and ETHE for Ethereum. They got one for Litecoin and Bitcoin Cash as well. So Salty says, social credit life is already in China. Yeah, that you can see where that's gonna go in the US, right? So if you put things together and you can connect the dots, what's gonna likely happen is that once the vaccine gets to a point where it can be mass distributed to everybody in the US or whatever your country is, that eventually, like things like grocery stores will say, well, you can't enter unless you can show proof of vaccination. And so that will immediately kind of start to like reduce your status in society or your value to society in a way. And the government's going to know that, and the government's going to know like who's an anti-vaxxer, who's a dissident, which I think is like a horrible idea, but that's where we're heading. Waffle Toast says, please comment on UBI or Universal Basic Income. All right, I will do that. I'm sorry about I got a stuffy nose here, so, all right. It's so gross, I apologize, but I'm not gonna blow my nose, so I just gotta suck it in a little bit. All right, UBI, so, hear my thoughts on it, like the way that I'm super disappointed. Like I know people that they got laid off because of COVID. Their businesses had to shut down. So they got laid off, and they were able to collect unemployment, and they're still collecting unemployment, and then they get the stimulus checks like that. What will become a regular thing, I think, and be essentially monthly universal basic income. And they're pretty happy not working. And that to me is like, okay, well, that's going to be disastrous, because what it's going to cause is taxes are going to have to go up on everybody. And the popular thing is people want to tax the rich, but even if you took all the money from the rich people, it's not going to be able to pay for these things. So the middle class is going to have their taxes increased. And even if it isn't a direct tax, they're going to see it with inflation and food prices and things like that. I mean, you guys, like, you probably have noticed, like, I found it alarming, the increase in food prices at the grocery store and even at fast food joints in the past 12 months. You know, some things are up like 50%, and that kind of stuff is going to keep coming up. Yeah. Okay. So. Dennis, good to see you online, my friend. He says, what do you think catalyst would be for altcoins to take off in cryptocurrency? Okay, so the way for those of you who are new to crypto, usually, I mean, what's happened in the past, the last bull run we had was in 2017. And typically what happens is first the attention and the money moves into Bitcoin, which it has now. And then after that happens, it moves into the other big cap cryptos like Ethereum, Litecoin, Bitcoin Cash. I think those three are going to do very well in comparison to Bitcoin. They're going to get the attention next. Once those get their attention, then typically the money and the attention will flow to the altcoins, and that's when they'll take off. Nobody really knows how long a bull run can last. It could last a couple months, could last a year. So I would imagine, I would think that, you know, by June we'll probably see a pretty good launch, I think, of the altcoins. A lot of them are already moving very well and have performed really well in comparison to Bitcoin. I think a lot of them are going to start to rocket, you know, later this spring, but it's really dependent on a whole lot of things. We'll have to see, just my opinion. Don says it's all going to one flat tax. Maybe. Here's what pisses me off. Think about this. Like, why in the hell should any of us pay taxes? Why? Because each of our governments, no matter where you live, our central banks print currency. So why the fuck do we pay taxes? There is no reason. The government doesn't need our money. They can just print it. It's like they're kings and queens wanting to take something from the serfs that are working for them. There is no reason economically for any of us to pay taxes. It's messed up. But, so anyway, who knows what will happen with the taxes. I would like to see things like somebody mentioned Nassar. I would love to see that stuff happen. That stuff does not happen unless massive change happens at the political level, not only in the US, but around the world. And this is why you can't have something, unless Jesus Christ is going to come back and return with his angels and kick some ass around here. You need somebody like Trump who has connections to the military, to the intelligence agencies, to the politicians, the bankers, the influential people to make shit happen. Otherwise, stuff like Nassar Jashar is a fucking pipe dream. Like, all this stuff could have been a huge psyop. Everything in life is a fucking psyop. You see a commercial for Burger King, it's a psyop. They're trying to fuck with your mind so you buy Burger King burgers, right? Everything is a fucking psyop. So the question is just like, how much, or is it bad, or how big is it? But you can't have any of this stuff unless the predecessor, the precursor happens. So unless the deep state is going to get flushed out, the bad actors are going to get out, there's no fucking way we're going to have Jassar and Nassar. So anybody that's promoting that shit, like, I listen to people like every day, like on different channels, and a lot of the spiritual channels too. They're like, you know, we're going to, great things are going to happen. It's like bullshit. I'm on the ground. I can fucking see what's happening. And unless we actually have real action that happens, it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. So, you know, I'm hoping, like, if we're not going to get shit done here with the people that are currently in positions of power, then I welcome an alien invasion, or I welcome, like, God's angels or the fucking dead coming back to life and kicking some ass. Because it's not going to happen. All of this shit is a pipe dream. And I'm sorry to burst your bubble if you believe that really awesome things are in a future. Keep thinking that. You should. If that makes you happy, fucking keep thinking that, because I don't. Anyway. Don says, military's in charge. Watch what happens tomorrow. I hope that shit happens. I want to see, like, every fucking politician arrested and things to be made better. I hope it happens. I think the probability is pretty low. But I would ask you, Why the hell we have 30,000 or more National Guard troops stationed in Washington, D.C. for a virtual fucking inauguration to protect the political elites from the boogeyman, right-wing conspiracy theorists / terrorists that are going to be there that aren't going to fucking show up? Why the fuck do we have 30,000 of them there? Why do we have National Guard stationed, positioned at every state capital in every state in the U.S.? You can't tell me that it's legitimately because of protests. Because if it was, why the fuck weren't they out here this past summer when cities were burning? So I would like to think that the military is going to take some action. I would love that. The question I would have is it the good kind of action that we would hope? Because the military can take action, good or bad. The military, if it does take action, if there is something that's going to happen that's good, that's awesome. But what if the military does something that's bad, that ushers in something bad faster than we ever thought could happen? Never rule out that happening. The people in the military, they've sworn an allegiance to the Constitution, but ultimately they answer to the commander-in-chief, and they will do what the commander-in-chief asks them to do. So do not for one moment think they won't do some very bad things. There are a lot of good people in the world, in history and recently, that are good people that have done horrible things because they've been instructed to do so. So never assume that it's always going to go in your way. Yeah, Love and Light says it's a show of power, boot in your face. It sure is. I mean, anybody from should be able to say that the government, the politicians, people in the deep state, whoever the fuck you want to call them, they're basically saying, fuck you. Like, we're in control now. And the deep state, the cabal, the politicians, they know about the stuff that, is put out with Q. I was talking to somebody, I'm like, okay, if I was if the Q movement, QAnon was legit, and I swear to God, I hope it is. But if I wanted to communicate with people out there, my supporters, I would have to put a mix of disinformation out there, because I know that other people, the people that I want to go after, are going to be reading this shit too. So you got to put out like a mix of disinformation. And you got to make like stuff isn't happening. You have to your enemy, you're trying to communicate to your friendlies, but to your enemy, you're trying to really make it look like somebody is just pulling the good people along on some fucking psyop. Like that's what I would do. That's how I would engineer it, because you cannot communicate with friendlies that are members of the general public without going on public channels. So you got to do a bunch of cloak and dagger shit and keep everybody in fucking suspense. I mean, the whole country in the U.S. is in suspense right now. The Democrats, most of them, are like concerned about right-wing people who are going to fucking burn down the Capitol, I think. And a lot of the conservatives are like, I can't tell you how many people I know that have contacted me in the past 2 days that have said, have you heard about potential military action that maybe Trump will stay in? People I never thought would say that. The message is getting around, so a lot of people are thinking about it. They're either worried about it, they're hopeful for it. Like the whole fucking country is on edge. Like if something needs to happen. I mean, the whole inauguration with all I don't know if you've seen the photos of the flags out there. It looks like something out of North Korea. It's not the U.S. Like I used to think, and I was told, that the United States was exceptional. And I would say it is, because we are one of the few empires that have provided an example of what can happen when things go to shit. Like how we got started was exceptional. Who we are as a country right now is nothing fucking close to what we were like when we started. Nothing. Don't believe all the patriotic bullshit. We're nothing like 1776. We're nothing like the founding fathers. We're not. There are a lot of good people, but overall, no fucking way. Grant Cardone, one of the guys I listen to, he's like a real estate guy investing. He had an interview on London Real, and this is like a year or two ago. And he was talking about people, like Americans, and just their ability to the willingness to like go up, branch out, start a business, better their lives. And he said, you know, America, land of the free, home of the brave. He's like, it's not, it used to be, it's not that way anymore. And I agree with him. Like we say those things. You can sing the national anthem, but really is that true? Because I don't see that as true. I see a bunch of fucking pussies that are hiding behind their goddamn masks thinking they're gonna fucking die. And I know, I told somebody, I'm like, I would rather risk dying of fucking yellow fever than never have a chance to see my fellow human beings' faces again, or travel, or have a semi-normal life. I will risk that every fucking day. But I see a bunch of fucking pussies that are the majority of people that have lost their fucking mind. Like, you're wearing a mask outside when you're walking out fucking side. Give me a goddamn break. I didn't put the disclaimer up at the beginning of this, like, this is not a family-friendly, safe. Like, I swear, I'm somebody that believes the word fuck is the most versatile and beautiful word in the English language. So I apologize for not putting the warning out before, but I'm not somebody that is just gonna say things nicely. I'm a no bullshit kind of person that just says, calls things out the way I see them. And I know my opinion isn't the same as yours, that's okay. But this is why, like, different viewpoints and dissent is necessary in society. Delia says the mask is making people sicker. Probably, I mean, you know, one thing that I heard a couple months ago, somebody had, they were going into the hospital, somebody that we knew, they were going to the hospital, they had breathing issues, and doctors didn't know what it was until one doctor was like, you know, maybe we should check for Legionnaire's disease. And it turned out that's what it was, because they were wearing their mask. And the mask was, you know, getting moist, and there was like mold, fungus growing in there. And then you're breathing that shit in. It's gonna cause problems for people. And I don't know, whatever. Yeah. Strawberry says, my dad's so terrified of COVID that he hasn't let me go home since December 2019. The loneliness is killing him. Yeah, so it's really, I feel really bad for, especially older people. Like, my grandmother is in an assisted living complex, and they don't let the resident, you know, each resident has their own room. They don't let them visit with each other. She is so lonely. You know, my parents basically go in and steal her out of there every once in a while against rules, so they, you know, she can come over for Thanksgiving, you know, with us, or go out to, you know, dinner for her birthday. But she's lonely. I can't imagine. She's 89. I saw like a video or a post or something a couple weeks ago where they had a bunch of senior citizens standing up front outside of a nursing home, and they basically said, we would rather risk dying of COVID than die of loneliness. And that sums it up. Like, how do you want to live your life? You know, I was talking to my mom, or somebody from, I think it was my mom, somebody else maybe in my family, and I said, they're like, well, you know, but if you don't wear a mask, you know, you're risking your life. I'm like, Mom, every time I drive someplace, I'm risking my life. I could die every time I drive to work. Every time I get on a plane, I could die tonight of a heart attack. Life isn't guaranteed for any of us. So, but I see so many people that are living in fear that their quality of life and their mental health is just going to shit. And like, my mental health, like, I look at the world and I'm like, this place is pretty messed up. Like, it's super depressing to me to see this and to think that kids are growing up in this. But anyway. Yeah. Yeah, a lot of people are living in fear. Yeah, Dahlia says humans by nature need family, laughter, and togetherness. It's true, we're social people. We need that. I remember, like, when I was single, for a while, for a couple years, like, you don't, like, it's so weird, like, when you finally meet somebody, or even before you meet somebody, like, so weird to think about that you don't have human touch. You don't have somebody like hold your hand or hug you or rub your back or whatever. Other than family or coworkers, that kind of stuff. But it's very weird, like when you don't have somebody like have that physical interaction, and when we are separating ourselves, we're so afraid to go out and hang out together, have conversations, get together. I don't know. Okay, so what would you guys like me to talk about? I see a lot of stuff about the masks and stuff. Meat Hook says the deep state is 15 years behind the schedule. They thought they had it with Hillary, and Trump messed up the plan. Yeah, probably. That's one reason I really like Trump. He was an outsider. I mean, he's like rich, powerful person, which, you're not going to get somebody who's middle class who becomes president. That's not the way it works, unfortunately. But yeah, he was an outsider, which I liked about him. And he didn't give a shit about his opposition. And he was the one guy that walked through fire his entire administration, taking heat, and did a really fine job of it, I think. Paladin says, any more fireside chats in the future? Maybe in the spring when it gets warm out. It's freezing out here right now, so I'm not going to do those for a couple months. Tourette says, what's going to happen with Ghislaine Maxwell when her friends get back into power? Yeah, there are a lot of, what irritates me is there are a lot of people that clearly have done some really bad things, and they really haven't been prosecuted. Like a lot of information was like declassified in the past couple days. And honestly, it's almost like it doesn't matter. So it's, yeah. Jose says, will we go into 100-day lockdown nationwide? Who knows, maybe. Wouldn't be surprised. It all depends on what kind of narrative they want to push. So it's not, from my perspective, it's not due to legitimate health reasons. It would be to basically further whatever the agenda they wanted. And whether people like to admit it or not, one of the agendas is to shut down small businesses, to make people dependent on the government, because they know small businesses are going to shut down or have to lay people off. And that's going to make people dependent on government when you give them universal basic income, the stimulus, and increased or enhanced unemployment for longer periods of time. It's going to happen. They like that. It's nice to get paid and not have to do anything, and people get hooked on that. And then when you do that and you get in that situation, you become a slave to whoever's giving you money. And so you're dependent upon the government. And you also create a whole class of citizens who are your constituents, because they will want to vote you back into power because they like the perks you're giving them. But again, like I said, I don't know and I don't believe that we will have in the future legitimate elections in the United States, which is super sad. If you notice, like anybody with the, all you have to do is like look at the rallies, quote unquote, for Biden prior to the election versus the ones that were held for Trump, and there's no fucking way that Biden got more votes than Obama did, than anybody else in an election. But that's not what's been accepted. It's not what's even been accepted by the Republicans, because they could have stood up and challenged it a lot more than they did. And so our people that we've elected just kind of let things pass. Yeah, Tourette says lockdown here in the UK. Army are helping with testing in Liverpool and other cities. Bad news. The lockdowns in the UK, I've seen stuff. I mean, it's really very authoritarian stuff in the UK and Australia too. Um, I feel bad for you guys. I think it's worse in many than it is in the U.S. In many cases. So just hang tight. I don't know what to say. The one thing nice thing I saw in Europe is that a lot of people participate in protests, which isn't really happening in the U.S. Lloyd says, do you think AOC will eventually take Pelosi's position? Yeah, maybe. So here's what I think. Like Biden, I mean, he's an older guy. Clearly, there's legitimate, and I feel bad from it, from this. Like, there's clearly cognitive decline, which happens a lot of times when you get older. I don't think he's going to make it through the end of his term. I think something will happen, either that will affect his mental capacity, whatever it is, and Kamala would become vice president or president. I think Nancy Pelosi would end up being VP, and if that happened, probably AOC would get voted in. I don't remember the voting stuff, but I wouldn't be surprised. AOC is crazy. A lot of crazy, scary people in politics that I think we're in a tough spot because the Democrats have control of the House and the Senate and the presidency. So yeah. Yeah, Robin says there seems to be a lot of adverse reactions to the vaccine. Any thought on that? I've seen a lot of information about that. Where I saw some statistics, it was pretty alarming. It was like, to me, it was like, I saw some stuff based on, they were talking about the number of shots that they had given of the vaccine versus the number of adverse reactions, ranging from, feeling like crap for a couple days to getting Bell's palsy and having paralysis in half of your face to requiring like major hospitalization. And those adverse effects were like really high. That was like over 1%. Or about 1%, which is extremely high for like a serious adverse reaction, especially for something that isn't really effective, because they've already said that the vaccine doesn't help. You're gonna have to get it again and again. You're still gonna have to wear masks. So it's like, what is the point of the vaccine? Why would you take that risk? A 1% risk is actually pretty high when it's gonna affect you the rest of your life. Yeah, talking about George Soros, like all these people, like really wealthy, powerful people, they're going to benefit greatly. And this is like, these are the people that we know about. They're undoubtedly people that we've never heard of that are really behind the scenes. It's just like the same old thing, like the same shit, like generation after generation. I don't see that changing. I mean, we seriously need, like, I'm waiting for the aliens or God or the angels or Trump and the military to change something in a big way and oust everybody. Because it's not going to happen without one of those things happening. We've just passed the point of everyday people like you and I being able to change things at a massive scale. Our systems throughout the world are just too complex. The financial systems, the military systems, just the capabilities of, I guess, the deep state. The people in power are just too great for individuals and groups of individuals to overcome, and that's my opinion. Hey, thanks for coming, June. I appreciate it. Yeah, Grateful One says the Rona's never going to go away. We're going to get vaccines every year. Yep. And guess what? They're going to just say, well, something else is going to come out. Like when you do the same thing for flu, regular flu or whatever, it's just going to be It's not going to be good. It's not going to be good. But that's where we're at. Molly says, are they going to put us in a camp if we don't take the vax? Good question. Not right away. But I saw something just today on Twitter. There was an article that Germany of all countries, is going to put people who are anti-mask and anti-lockdown into detention camps. And I thought, for any country to do this, has Germany not learned its lesson? When is the last time that camps were used in Germany? Why is this not like sounding alarm bells to people, countries, and people all around the world? And if this is going to be accepted that Germany can do it, then why couldn't it happen in the US or the UK or Canada? Right now, there are calls from, there's a video that's gone viral by one of the liberal leftist freaks who is just going after Republicans, conservatives, and saying they're basically terrorists. And that would so many people have said, like, I think it was Hillary Clinton, maybe somebody else as well, or instead of her, said that basically that Trump supporters and conservatives and their kids need to be re-educated. Re-educated. When you start using terminology like that and talking like that, it's really dystopic. And it reminds me of things where we as a country or other countries, you know, people around the world, governments around the world have really fucked up big time and done some horrific things. So when you start to take those first steps and say those things like that, it's really, to me, very, very disconcerting. Blue Moon says that was AOC. Okay, so AOC was the one that said that. Probably some other people too. I thought some other people had said that. It's just really, like the language, the rhetoric, and that's been said like in the past couple of days is just, it's so crazy to me, and Biden isn't even in power yet. And that's the thing that, to me, is pretty alarming. It'll be interesting to see what happens. Yeah, Meat Hooks is re-educated with 400 volts to the skull. Yeah. Robin says, do you see a correction happening in the stock market this year? You know, the stock market is completely disconnected from the real economy. I think the Federal Reserve is going to print money to basically ensure that we don't have a stock market crash if they can help it. So we will always have a disconnect. And this is one of the reasons the rich get richer. And the term rich is relative. The rich is, you know, I define rich as anybody who invests anything, who takes the time to better themselves because they are richer than somebody else. When people say rich, they often think about the millionaires, the billionaires. $1 million isn't a lot of money this year, not anymore. But anybody who has money in the stock market will do much better than anybody who isn't invested. The markets don't like uncertainty. So, for example, if there was military action tomorrow or something crazy happens, we'll probably see the stock market tank significantly because the markets don't like uncertainty. I don't know. I don't know what to think. You know, there's, who knows? Who knows? Yeah, Lori says re-educated is dangerous rhetoric. Look what happened to the Native Americans when they were forced into Indian schools. Yeah, same thing. Like you look at like the Japanese American, like internment camps. You look at, you know, in history, like just recently, like China, like with the, I don't know how they're pronounced. It's like the Uyghurs or whatever. Anyway, there's a belief that they have that doesn't vibe with the Chinese Communist Party. So they re-educate people, which is basically torture. So I'm sure that there are trillionaires by now, says Ministry of Truth. Yeah, I'm sure a lot of them are. All right, I think I'll leave, I'll put like a 10-minute limit on this, and then I'm gonna take off. Is there anything else that you guys would like to talk about? Janet says, what about the Great Reset? Yeah. So we talked about it a little bit earlier with Klaus from the World Economic Forum. A lot of people have talked about this. A lot of people, wealthy people in the investment community have been very open about using that terminology, the Great Reset. Ray Dalio is, he's a billionaire. He's talked about it. I think Ray is probably one of the good guys in the sea of people that are out there. But yeah, the reset is going to, in my opinion, it's going to hurt most everybody. And I think unless you're paying attention, you're going to get burned. And that's why, I think it's wise to have some of your finances and your wealth in precious metals and some in cryptocurrency. And those aren't guaranteed. Because ultimately, we are not in control of stuff like that. We are the serfs in this setup, right? The kings and queens control the governments and the banking system. We don't have our own systems, and cryptocurrency is the closest thing we have to it. Meat Hook says, yeah, be safe tomorrow, and after that, see you in the re-education camps. Yeah, maybe, huh? Maybe. Strawberry says, what are your thoughts on Bitcoin and about it being stable? Bitcoin is never really stable. I think Bitcoin's going to go up in value. I think it's going to do very well. There's a ton of volatility in cryptocurrency always, but yeah, I think it's going to do well. Adalia says, do you think the Fed can buy platforms like Coinbase? Yeah, they could. That's what I would do. If I'm in control, I'm going to put my evil hat on, and I'm going to be in control. I'm going to be advising the governments of the world and the rich and powerful, the elites, how to maintain control in this crazy world of cryptocurrency. I would just say, solved. We are going to buy out Coinbase. Or when they go public, we're going to buy up most of the shares, and we're going to oust the CEO. We're going to take over. Because exchanges like Coinbase and Gemini and Binance, those are the on and off ramps. And that on ramp means how do you take your dollars or your euros and buy crypto? That's an on ramp. An off ramp is when you want to sell your crypto. So if somebody controls the on and off ramps, the exchanges, they limit our ability to obtain cryptocurrency or to transact in it or to turn it into fiat currency, which is useful. Eventually, we won't need that, but we're a long ways from that. But yeah, that's what I would do. Okay, all right. All right, well, I'm gonna wrap it up there. Thank you everybody for joining. I really appreciate it. I know it's been a super long time since I've done any of these live streams and just videos in general, and I'll try to do some more. It's super, I stepped away. I said this before, I stepped away from doing videos, partly because I was working on other stuff, but partly because I was like, this sucks. This whole world sucks. So I hope you guys, do what you need to keep your mental health up there. And, like I said, you got to lean on your faith, whatever that is, even though it's it feels like it's just a pipe dream sometimes. And honestly, that's what it feels like. You got to do what you got to do and believe in whatever you believe in. Ultimately, you have yourself and your family that you can rely on. And ultimately, it's you. You're the man or woman of last resort. But anyway, you guys take care. Thank you so much for joining me again tonight. And I wish you guys all the best of luck in everything you're doing. Consider diversifying your assets and protecting your butt, and make sure that you've got some emergency supplies, food, water, things like that for yourself and your family. I think it's super important. Anyway, you guys take care. Until I see you guys next time, good luck. God bless.